Welcome, Pitmasters. Tonight we have with us someone that you're probably familiar with, Candy Sue Weaver, one of our moderators, and also somebody that is very well known and very well respected in the barbecue community. She has recently stepped down as president of the Kansas City Barbeque Society. Her term ended, but she's been a member of the board of directors since 2009 and will be until 2016. She has really seen KCBS through a period of great transition and is respected and beloved by all for her good works. She's also a competitor. She works on the competition circuit cooking with pellets, and that's no surprise because she makes and manufactures and sells and distributes BBQr's Delights pellets, and these are very high quality food grade wood pellets for pellet smokers, and we'll talk to her about pellet smoking, pellet smokers, pellets, and where the pellet world has come from and where it's going. So Candy, let's start with a simple question. What is a pellet smoker and how does it work for those who have never worked with one?
Let's step back a minute and talk about pellets.
Yeah.
Because in my world, there's two different kinds. There's pellets that you use for smoking, and they're not the fire. And then there's pellets that provide both the fire and the flavor. And there are differences between those kind of pellets, and mainly because pellets that you want to use for heat have to have high and consistent BTUs, which means it's got to be able to produce heat to be able to cook. I can remember once upon a time I was at a trade show early in my pellet life, and we had used up everything, and the folks in the factory made a mistake and put 100% apple in a 20-pound bag. There weren't any BTUs in those pellets. We couldn't cook. Had a real nice fire, but there wasn't the energy in there to provide enough heat to let us cook anything, and we got a nice coat of creosote on our meat. Does that kind of help a little bit?
Well,
now in my competition work, I use pellet-fired cookers, and that's when I say that's what I mean.
Well, I'd like to let's assume that there are people listening to this conversation who have never worked with a pellet smoker, have no idea what a pellet smoker is. They're charcoal or gas. So, can we start by talking a little bit about what is a pellet smoker and how does it work? How do pellets work in it? How does it generate heat? How does it generate smoke? How does it control temperature? Let's start with a very basic discussion of what is a pellet smoker, and then we can get into what are the pellets, how they're made, and what the difference is between pure varietal wood and blended woods and the strengths and weaknesses of that.
Okay, a pellet cooking appliance is just like a charcoal appliance or a gas appliance or an electric cooking device, except that you use pellets for the heat. And pellets are stored or poured into a hopper, which is just a storage box, and the hopper feeds down into a fire pot with an auger. Many of the cookers have an automatic lighting system, there's a hot rod in there, and the pellets will start smoking, and boom, fire will happen. Pellet-fired devices, and that's heaters or cookers or whatever, they work by means of a fan force system where the fan pushes through the burning pellets and causes a great big fire to happen, and sometimes smoke and sometimes no smoke. And it keeps, that's where the heat comes from. It's a combination of the pellets dropping into the burning fire pot and the fan force forcing the heat up into the cooking chamber. Make sense?
These pellets are like maybe the diameter of a pencil, and they're maybe ½ to 1/4 inch long, and they're made from sawdust, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
how do they remain as pellets? They're not glued together, are they?
Oh no, there's no. I don't talk about anybody else's pellets because there's different methods of making pellets, but our pellets are 100% wood, and there's a compound that's in the structure of the wood called lignin, and the pellet machinery generates a lot of heat and pressure, and the sawdust kind of liquefies and goes out through this extruder and makes these compressed pellets, and they break off, and then we size them and cool them and put them in bags. But it's the lignin that's naturally found in the wood that causes the pellets to hold together. And a pellet is actually 5 times denser than normal wood.
Really? So wood
Yes.
has a lot more airspace in it than this pellet.
Exactly. And that's what happens is we take dry sawdust and mix it to the percentage that we want the resulting pellets to be, and run it through the machine. And if you ever want to see how much real natural wood is in a pellet, drop some water on it. It'll start swelling up, and you'll see how big the natural wood is.
You don't by any chance have video of this process of manufacturing pellets, do you?
No, I've got some still pictures.
I would love.
We don't want everybody to know, Meathead.
When you said liquefy, I'd never heard that part of the process. So it would be very cool to see.
It's not really, but what it is you take your sawdust, you put it in, it runs through a hammer mill, which further mixes the sawdust and breaks up any larger pieces that might be in there before it runs into the pellet making machine.
Where do you get the sawdust?
There's a flooring mill that's about 50 miles away, and they produce very, very clean red oak and white oak sawdust. It's dry. It's before they've made it's what's left over from when they make the flooring.
So this is just ordinary sawdust from hardwood floor manufacturing.
That's one of our sources.
You're essentially recycling waste.
We were green before green was cool. Seriously,
but
our Jack Daniels pellets.
So it is a form of recycling then.
Absolutely. In fact, in real cold weather like we've been having, lots of the producers will burn their sawdust as a heat source themselves rather than sell it. So it becomes a bit of an issue to keep the mills rolling this time of year.
Really? So the charcoal guys also use sawdust. Do you find yourselves in competition with them for?
No, actually, we get some of our materials from Ozark Oak. So, and we get some. We've gotten hickory sawdust from a hammer handle manufacturer that's up the road a bit, and we have a sawmill ourselves, so we do some cutting.
Well,
we typically make our own pecan.
You don't just make pellets for cooking either. You make pellets for heating too, isn't that right?
We make pellets for heating. We make pellets for critter litter.
All right. Tell us about both of those. Heating came first, didn't it?
Yes. Back in the 80s, I believe, is when pellet heating came into being, and that was a product of the Northwest of the country. And I forget exactly the date when Joe Traeger got a patent on cooking with pellets. But,
I believe it was
Joe Traeger,
1982.
he had a patent on that for many, many, many years, and really kept a stranglehold on any company that wanted to make other devices. And really, I can remember days when there were less than 6 manufacturers of barbecue pellets in the country. And we always consider ourselves the other manufacturer that Traeger always talked about. They don't use their pellets in my cooker. So
now, it doesn't hurt to use your pellets in a Traeger, does it?
My Traeger's only burnt my pellets. So,
what a surprise.
and and I've had issues with it, but it didn't have anything to do with the pellets.
Now, so the Traegers in '82 were really the pioneers in this field. I did a quick check. You know, we have a database of grill and smoker ratings and reviews. Did a quick check before our chat today. Guess how many different models? Now, Traeger, for example, has 10 different models or so, 6 or 8. Guess how many different models of pellet smokers are in our database?
Today?
Yeah.
I would say probably about 50.
53. Not bad, kid. 53. Can you imagine? I mean, I remember when they first appeared. I really think that pellet smokers are the greatest single evolution in barbecue since propane in a tank.
I might even go back and say the briquette.
Might be. I mean, there are some features. Again, I'm sure there are people listening to this who've never worked with a pellet smoker. You described roughly how they work. There's an auger that feeds them into a little cup, or it's called a burn pot, I guess, but it's not much bigger than a beer can, a little bigger, and that's where the combustion occurs, and it creates both heat and smoke. But one of the cool things about pellet smokers is that most of them have digital controllers, so you can set a temperature. And so if you want to cook at 225, usually they come in 5-degree increments or something. You can set it at 225, and just like your indoor oven, it heats up to maybe 230, then it stops, cools down to maybe 220, heats up to 230. But most of them have this sinusoidal curve that is a very tight curve. My indoor oven has like a 30-degree swing of 15 degrees above and 15 degrees below. It averages the temperature that you set it for, but it goes way above and way below. These pellet smokers really, the better ones at least, can hold a very tight temperature. I presume you've worked with a bunch of them, haven't you?
I have, and I actually am going to probably say something that might get me in trouble with some manufacturers, but I think they're too efficient. I think you lose your smoke when they're too efficient, because you think about it, the whole process is, you know, you got your fire going and it's burning, and then it's going to dump some pellets in, and then it's going to smolder a little bit. Well, that smolder is your smoke. And then it's going to catch on fire, and it's going to burn, and then it's going to dump some more, and that smolder. And when they go to where they're just dropping 5, 6 pellets in at a time, you're not going to get that smolder. You're not going to get that smoke flavor.
That seems to be the biggest complaint of pellet owners. I guess there are 2 common complaints, and we'll take them one at a time. One is that it's really hard to grill a steak on it. We can talk about that. And 2, that there's just not a very strong smoke flavor. You just kind of addressed that. It's very efficient, and it's really remarkable when you're done. There's very little ash, isn't there?
That's true. They're very, very efficient, and I mean, there's some of them. Like, for instance, on an FEC 100, I can cook for 20 hours on 20 pounds of pellets. That's a pound an hour. That's not really a whole lot of wood to go for that kind of time. And there's other models out there that require a bit more to maintain the temperature. But
now the FEC 100, that's Fast Eddy Cooker, which is distributed by Cook Shack.
Right.
Created and designed by Fast Eddy, what's his last
name?
Morin, right. Who was also a pioneer in this world. Are you still competing with a 100?
Well, I'm fixing to break it out of the garage. I've for the last 5 years, you actually cooked with me one of the last times I used my FEC.
You remember.
I do indeed.
I had the privilege of I think they call it in the culinary world staging. I was Candace's flunky, and I probably got in the way more than I helped. I just kept asking questions and taking pictures. But if you haven't seen it, folks, there's a photo story that I did of that couple of days I spent with Candy at barbecue competition, and I really like it. I think it's one of my better pieces because it really shows what goes on behind the scene and kind of paints the picture. And she's a lot of fun to hang with and work with. But you were cooking with an FEC 100. You're not using that a lot lately?
Well, right after that, I had, it took me 2.5 years to talk Jamie Gear into retrofitting or forward fitting my Jambo, with the pellet, fire unit that I had. And, right after that, I took that on the road and I've cooked with it for the last 5 years.
So you've been cooking on one of Jamie Gear's pits, which is a horizontal offset heavy-duty steel pit designed for log burning, and you have one retrofitted with a pellet unit?
Yep, I do indeed.
Is this one of a kind?
Like I said, I was going down the road. Huh?
Is this one of a kind?
Well, there is a guy in Tennessee that has one, because Jamie asked me if it was patented, and I said no. Take all the pictures you want. You can copy it. Basically, the pellet fire system is made out of old heater parts, and the fire pot. You talked about the fire pot being the size of a cup. This one is about the size of a small pound cake, about like that. So it puts out 1,300 degrees. It's a monster. And the neat thing about it is it's high, medium, and low auger speed and high, medium, and low fan. It's actually a ceiling fan rheostat. So it's pellet cooking at a real primitive level. People say, well, where's your thermometer? And I said, well, it's on the door there, but it doesn't have anything to do with the fire. I'm the pit master. I am the keeper of the flame. So, most people look at it and say, well, you're okay for a pellet smoker. But I've got to admit, the newer machines, they really make it almost too easy.
So are you going to go back into competing with a thermostat controlled pellet smoker?
I'm going back to my old 2004 FEC 100. I mean, it's not the latest and greatest by any means. Now, I do have a very, very unique grill. I've felt somewhat limited in that I had to cook everything with one flavor of pellets. And I wanted to be able to do something different with chicken and ribs, and then do something different with pork and brisket, and which you can do on 2 cookers, but you really can't do on one. And, so I'm going to take the FEC. I picked up a trailer last weekend. I got a Razor trailer, which is a motorcycle trailer, and ground loading. And because I'm basically a lazy person and I don't want to have to depend on somebody else to get it up on the trailer, it drops all the way to the ground. I can push up a cooker and lock it down and tie it down. And I'm going to use my latest grill, which is a Backwoods Pellet Chef, which is the cutest little thing. It even has a deep frying attachment that runs on pellets.
Now, is this something Backwoods is manufacturing? Backwoods is now making
it. Backwoods is making it. This was a prototype. It was one of 15, and I told him when I found out about it, I said, "Well, put one with my name on it," and I picked it up at the Jack last October.
Huh.
And we cooked steaks with it October at the Jack.
Let's come back to the different models of smokers in a little bit and talk about this issue of I think the 2 complaints that we hear most frequently is it's not a very strong smoke flavor, and it's hard to grill with. I have often said that sometimes a flute solo can be just as beautiful as a full orchestra. And that is the analogy I use for pellet smokers, because I think it's a very delicate, elegant smoke. It's not the full brass band that you get with a stick burner, a log burner, where you get this deep, heavy, rich, potent smoke. A lot of people like that. Is there a workaround? Is there a way that one can get a richer, more powerful smoke flavor with a pellet smoker?
Yes. It used to be real easy because we manufactured a giant pellet that was about, well, hold on a minute. I'll go grab one. I'll be right back.
I've seen it. It's like the size of my forearm.
Yeah, it was about that big around, and it was a giant pellet. For a while, I thought I'd market ourselves as the biggest pellet manufacturer in the world. But anyway, it was a miserable failure as a product. But this compressed wood that was about 2.5 inches in diameter, you could break off a piece and put it in a cup and put it above there and get a real burst of smoke. And you can do that as well with wood chunks. You don't want to soak them with wood chips. With another kind of pellet, you can add, there's ways to augment the smoke. But you have a whole nother issue with air in these things. You know, some pellet smokers, first of all, you don't have easy access to the fire pot. And then all the air is being funneled through the convection system that keeps the fire going, and there's no air to let anything else smoke. And even if you get it hot, if there's not enough air to let it smoke, it's not going to get up there and be delivered. So some people add on other devices to augment the smoke.
I've put a hunk of wood right on top of that cup, and it does smolder, and it gives you some white smoke, which has a stronger smoke flavor. I use a Mac 2-star a lot. In fact, Chef Ryan and I do a lot of our recipe development on a Mac 2-star because it is so precise in its temperature that when we want to write a recipe and tell people how long it takes to cook, we really need to manage temperature. And although I love my Weber Smoky Mountain and my Big Green Egg, and believe me, I have plenty of smokers, for recipe development, there's nothing that beats the Mac because it's so consistent in temperature. But yeah, you don't get a strong flavor of smoke. So you also have played with putting a hunk of wood or something on top of that cup. Oh
yeah.
But you say there's sometimes an air problem?
Well, there are, and I'm going back to a friend of mine that cooked on a wham cooker. That's one of the early pellet smokers. It was developed by John Willingham out of Memphis, and in fact that's one of the reasons why he's one of the reasons why we manufactured barbecue pellets, because he found us over in Memphis and sat down in my brother's office and says, "You need to make barbecue pellets," and so my brother did, but the wham cooker is very different in that rather than pellets dropping down from an auger system, they're actually kind of pushed up into the fire pot. And it was so different that Traeger didn't even fight him for the patent because it was so different than what Traeger does. And the chamber where the fire pot is pretty much airtight, and there's no room to get it to. You can't augment, because there's no air left. The pellet fire itself is using all of it. And backing up to getting more smoke flavor though, and I always kind of warn people about this. We do have one particular variety of pellet grill fuel that is in the hickory family, and that's black walnut. And black walnut is intensely strong. It's a hickory flavor, but it's intensely strong and can tend to be bitter if you overdo it. But it will give you a stronger smoke flavor. Well, but you're not going to get that richness that you'd get with a wood fire.
Well, now
you're just not.
But there was a period of time a few years ago when it seemed like pellet cookers were sweeping all the top prizes.
They
still do. They still do win a lot of prizes, but it doesn't seem like so many. It seems like the stick burners now are back in vogue. Am I right about that?
You are. You are. I mean, I can't say anything more about it.
What pellets do you like
But
to use?
I gotta say the insulated box smokers, the charcoal pitch, your Stumps, your Backwoods, your Humphreys, your all these other ones, they're coming on strong too. You know, team of the year last year, he's a Backwoods man. So, Southern smokers, there's lots of these insulated charcoal smokers that you can regulate with a barbecue guru or some other device to maintain the temperature.
With the pellets, now, is this black walnut 100% black walnut? Is the hickory 100% hickory, or do you blend other woods with it? And if you do, why?
We blend. Well, there's two reasons why. We blend for pellet grill fuel to maintain the BTUs because our oak sawdust is so consistent. And we'll mix the flavor woods in because they tend to have more bark. Bark equals ash. Bark equals bitter. So you get a cleaner fire and you'll have better results with your pellet smoker. But this black walnut is a blend. You wouldn't want to use 100%. In fact, I had several bags of hickory, and somebody said, well, why don't you just try 100% hickory? So I did. It put my fire out at 12:30 at a contest. That was not a good thing.
Why did it go out?
Ash. The ash built up on the deflector plate and fell down in the fire pot, and it was 12:30. I was in the middle of building boxes, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. I mean, but it had literally caked up about that thick.
Yeah, one of the things we've learned about ours is that even though they don't produce a lot of ash, they need to be cleaned out regularly. And the current designs that I've worked with, now there may be a newer design that I'm not familiar with, clean out is not as easy as one would hope. Typically you have that pot that we discussed that holds the pellets where they're combusted, and above it is a flat metal plate that absorbs the heat and radiates it into the cooking chamber, and so it's an indirect heat system. Some of them have holes or things that you can move out of the way to allow a direct flame, but most of them it's a flat metal plate, and that flat metal plate does keep the ash down below, which is good. You don't want it on the food. But it's a pain to get that thing out of there and clean it out, and it does, and that metal plate gets really greasy on top. So they're not the panacea that a lot of people think they are, but their great advantage is, of course, set it and forget it. If it's cleaned out, it'll run 10, 12, 14 hours without touching it.
That's true. But I tell you, honest to goodness, I haven't met a pit yet that was easy to clean. I don't care what kind it is.
That's a fair point.
And I'm super neat about things, and I used to take my Jambo to the car wash every week after a contest before it went anywhere else. And
a car wash?
You couldn't. Oh yeah, and actually, I asked the owner of the car wash one time if he was okay with it, and he said, "Well, sure. You always clean up after yourself." And I'd use a degreaser, but I cleaned it out well.
That's a really interesting topic. It's a little off subject, but let's talk about cleanliness and godliness here. A lot of guys seem to think that you really want to have a layer of grease inside your cooker, that you need or at least carbon or something, that somehow seasons it and flavors it. What's your experience?
I think there's variations in cookers. I think it doesn't hurt a WSM. In fact, Harry Sue's interview with you, he definitely to keep a good layer in there. But I tell you what, I bet if he cooked salmon the weekend before, he'd clean it out. But I think it varies a lot with the cooker. I'm talking about you want to get the scum out of the bottom. You don't want to go to I've been to contests where literally you open it up and the guy's going to kill the maggots in the bottom of the pit before. And, you see chicken bones and just, gross out stuff,
Oh, I'm never judging again.
And I'm telling you, there's issues. And I think you should clean your pit out once in a while. And I've seen too many of the FEC 100s where they're cooking a batch of fowl and they've got all that chicken fat and drippings down in there, and before they know it, they have a fire and they burnt their all the seals out on the pit, and they've got an expensive rebuild. And it's just easier, and it's going to be harder on me because going back to an FEC, I cooked everything in pans. Just because I don't want to have to deal with greasy buildup. I cook everything in pans. And, you remember that. You saw me doing that. And, you're going to clean it one way or the other, whether it's in a pan or in the pit. You're going to clean that stuff out. Just for the sake of the next batch of food you cook.
Let's go back to the different, pellet flavors. How many different flavors do you make?
Hickory, mesquite, pecan, apple, cherry, oak, sugar maple, black walnut, peach. And this is just in the pellet grill fuel. We've got Jack Daniels, sassafras, orange, mainly because we had a lot in the warehouse in the 100% line, so we blended them and made some pellet grill fuel. And right now, that's it. And a Jack Daniels. That's our newest one. We got Jack Daniels in the 20-pound bag now.
When you cook, do you have preferences or blends or favorites? Any superstitions?
Yes. Do you want me to expound upon that?
Please.
Well, I actually sell, on my website, I sell something. It's Candy's Contest Mix.
What is that
Candy's
website?
Contest Mix is a bag of cherry and a bag of pecan. And those are, in the pellet jumbo, I had to do everything in one cooker. And that was what I found that would give me really good flavor, really good smoke ring. And I liked it. Now, if I'm cooking in my mac and I have a 2-star too, I typically use cherry.
Cherry has a unique property. It does, not surprisingly, I guess, give you a nice ruddy color, doesn't it?
It does. I'm also very fond of apple. I won a grand using pecan, but it's kind of a joke because I'll go out before I go to a contest. I see what broken bags we have. 'Cause I can't sell them.
Well,
and
the fact is, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm kind of a debunker on all these wood flavors, with the idea in mind that you start with, say, pork ribs. You got pork fat, connective tissue, rub, a lot of good stuff in that rub, including sugar and spice and everything nice. And then you've got sauce. By the time you're done, the flavor of wood is really just a minor player in that orchestra, isn't it?
Yes.
So, am I too far off base when I tell cooks, don't fret over the wood flavor you use?
Well, I would differ with that if you use like mesquite.
Oh.
Mesquite is absolutely 100% overwhelming, and anything that you smoke with mesquite is going to taste like mesquite.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad flavor, but it's you're going to taste that.
It's distinctive.
Yes.
And hickory has some of those properties.
Yeah, it does.
And to hear you talk black walnut,
Yes.
I've never worked with it. My feeling always has been is that what a good cook is looking for is balance, harmony. Candy, I know you're a wine drinker like me, and that's what we both look for in a good wine is balance and harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And to carry this orchestra analogy just a little too far, I don't think you want the brass section out shouting the string section. I think it's all part of the picture, and but I do know a lot of people really like strong wood flavor. We talked to Dr. Blonder about this once, and he says he's got a Mac also, and he says one of the things when he wants a stronger flavor is he makes sure he puts cold meat on that smoker, because as we have discussed in other seminars, cool surfaces attract smoke. So the cooler, don't let it sit around and come to room temp. Get cold meat on that smoker, and use a strong flavored wood like a hickory, and keep the meat wet through the process with a spritz, because moisture attracts smoke, and that'll help build up some of the smoke flavor. There's other gadgets out there like the Amazing Tube and other things. Have you played with any of those? And
oh yeah, I have. Let's go back to smoke a minute though, because I went to a cooking school just a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that the teacher of this class was talking about was right before he's going to put everything in the box, he will sauce it, and then he'll get a nice rolling smoke going in his cookers, and he'll put his meat in just for 10 minutes. And he says that little hit right there will give you all the smoke flavor you need. But the way I look at it is barbecue is a gestalt. It's all of that, and you've got to make all of it work. And you don't want too much smoke. You don't want too much salt. You don't want too much pepper. You don't want too much sweet. You want it all to be down, and you still want to be able to taste the meat. And
amen on that.
And it sounds easy, but it really isn't. So
let's go to the other big question that people often hit me with, and that is, I just spent $2,000 on a really cool hyper speed hot shot pellet smoker, and I can't cook a steak on it. And my answer is well, no. In fact, a $30 hibachi from Walgreens will probably cook a better steak than the Super Saber Jet smoker, pellet smoker. Why is that?
A lot of it is the fact that the devices aren't built to maintain the high temperature that you need to sear a steak. You just got to get it hot. And I'm not talking lightly hot, like 400 degrees hot. You need 500 degrees. If you can't get your cooker up to 500, preferably even 5 to 6, you're not going to get a good sear on that meat.
Well, I mean, I know you can get 5 to 6 on a lot of these pellet smokers, but I think it's also important for people to know that air temp is different than radiant heat. And you need that direct radiant heat. You need that. You've got to get that deflector plate out of the way. You've got to get the heat right over the radiant heat source. I've written this article on the website on thermodynamics, and it's a matter of energy. Energy and heat are different. You can get your pit up to 225, and if you put a pot of water in that pit and let everything come up to 225, you can open the hood and stick your hand in there and hold it in there for a minute or two, no problem, 225. Put your hand in the water and see how long you can hold it there at 225. And then put your hand on the grates and see how long you can hold it there at 220. Everything's 225. It's just that that water delivers more energy than air, which is a really good insulator. Metal delivers more energy than water, and you want direct radiant heat, visible flame or visible glow, in the case of charcoal, below the steak in order to get a good dark surface. And I mean, you can do some things like a griddle or grill grates or a frying pan. I mean, you can put a cast iron pan in a pellet smoker, get that cast iron pan good and hot,
and get a sear on it.
Get a good sear, and I've had good luck with that. I mean, because a little smoke is nice on a steak. I don't like them heavily smoked, but you can pop it into a pellet smoker and pick up a little light smoke, and when it's up to about 120 degrees internal temp, throw it in a hot cast iron pan and get that exterior crunchy and golden and brown, and pull it off at 130 and have a pretty decent steak.
Yeah, I would agree. Wouldn't be as good as one cooked on a big green egg, though.
No, or even a hibachi.
That's true.
We're back to the question of the different pellets. Roughly, what is the blend ratio? I mean, you say oak is in all your pellets?
2/3 oak, 1/3 flavorwood.
Okay, well, so that's
except for the oak. That's oak blended with oak, so it's 100% oak.
Okay, and that's primarily to make it consistent, burn, and to get enough BTUs, right?
Exactly.
Have you ever worked with 100% pellets?
Well, we make 100% pellets. Yes, of course we do.
I mean, like 100% cherry, 100% apple?
Yeah.
Oh, you make those?
That's what's in our 1-pound bags.
Uh-huh.
You know, that's why I said I've got two product lines in barbecue. It's the flavor pellets, which are the 100%. In fact, I've got right here, I've got a bag of 100% hickory. It's in a beautiful purple resealable bag. It says 10 uses up here. This is to be used in a charcoal grill, a gas grill, anything other than a pellet-fired grill. It'll put your fire out. But yeah, we have 13 flavors of in our 100% line.
You know, I do that often. I will take a handful of pellets out of my hopper and throw it into my Weber kettle or my big green egg or something, and you know, instead of chips. Are a lot of people using 100% flavor pellets for that purpose?
Not as much as I would like, of course, but you know, it's people that find them like them. It does work very well to give you a smoke flavor very simply, very easily, and it is easily repeatable as far as the amount of smoke flavor you get in your food. And I think that's the biggest advantage over chips and chunks. Is you can say, okay, if I'm going to use 1/3 of a cup, or if I'm going to use a good handful and just throw it in there on my charcoal, I've got a pretty good idea what I've done.
Well, now that's a really interesting point. Again, when I argue to people that they should not fret about the kind of wood they're using, and let's say somebody cooking with charcoal, and they go down to the Home Depot and they pick up a bag of and yes, I know it's Depot. And they pick up a bag of applewood chunks, and they bring it home, and they cook with it a few times, and they say, "Nah, I don't like this," and they go out and get hickory, and there's no appellation contrôlée law for wood, which is what the French use to tell you when you buy a bottle.
I know what it is.
Yeah, I know.
No, there's not.
Yeah, you're a wino like me. There's a lot of winos in this.
In fact, there's some people that say, well, you know, there's no difference between pecan and hickory, or oh, there's no difference between persimmon and apple, or oh, I can throw peach wood in there with apple and just sell it as apple. I mean, there is no control.
Well,
there is no control.
All we have is the integrity of the producer.
Exactly.
We have to assume that since this is your business and you have a brand that has a reputation, you're not selling wood chunks at Home Depot, generic labeled wood chunks. I mean, I just know that there's this guy making these wood chunks out back of his barn, and he's got a contract from Lowe's, and they say, we need 1,000 bags of hickory, and he goes out back and he starts chopping up the hickory, and he gets 800 bags, and he's run out of hickory. So he starts throwing in a little apple or throwing in whatever, or maybe he just bags up some apple. I mean, how do we know that what we're getting is really hickory? How do we know that? Because there are no brand name chunks.
Oh, but there are. There are.
There are.
There are two big players in the wood market. You know, they're both in Texas, and I think at one point in time they didn't like each other very much. But that's another story. And it's barbecue wood flavors and Western wood products. One's in Northeast Texas and one's down outside of San Antonio. And you see Western wood all over the place. They are the primary wood purveyor in Walmart.
Really?
Yeah. And Western wood is Western is their brand name. And their stuff's pretty good.
And they bag it under their own label or under the Walmart label?
Yeah. No, they bag it under Western wood.
And you think
now,
highly of them?
Barbecue wood flavors out of Ennis, Texas, they tend to do more private label branding. I think they filled for Weber for a long time. They filled for Charbroil for a long time. Royal Oak has their own suppliers. You know, it's a small world in the barbecue wood business. And there's some really good people. There's one fella out of Missouri, and he does real good. I bought his wood at the Royal every year, and have ordered it before, because yeah, there are times that I burn sticks in my Jambo. So you just have to know and trust who you're using. But anybody that's blaming the wood for something that they don't like how it turned out, it's probably something else. You know, they have not done their fire correctly, and they've had a dirty burn, or they've got something in their rib that they really don't like, and maybe they have a sensitivity to MSG. Maybe there's something else there that's going on.
You know,
like I said, barbecue's a gestalt, so there's a whole lot of factors that go together to make it right, and one little thing can make it wrong.
I like to tell folks, if something went wrong and you want to try and figure out what it is, start by looking in the mirror. That's usually where the problem starts. Different cookers. We mentioned that there's 53 different models out there. If I had the money to write you a blank check and you could run out and buy any cooker you wanted, what would you get?
That's a hard question, Meathead.
You're on television. Don't make faces like that.
You know, my problem is I think I probably have all the cookers I want. I really want a G2 Chubby. I have a friend of mine, and his name's Danny Montgomery, and he's out of Memphis, and he cooks all backwoods, but all his backwoods are pellet, and I'm only half backwoods pellet right now, so I'd really like to have a G2 Party that's set up with a pellet thing on it, but the backwoods hadn't built it yet.
I got a G2 Party. Can I fix it up to cook with pellets?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
How do you do that?
Well, I would talk to Dennis at Smoke Daddy and spend some money with Dennis at Smoke Daddy.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's just down the road from you. He's an Illinois man.
Yeah. That's right. They may now. All right, let's talk about some of these other products. Smoke Daddy's an interesting product. He's going to send me some things to play with, but I told him wait until the snow melts. This is a pellet smoker attachment, isn't it? Tell me about this.
Well, he's got a smoke. He's got the Smoke Daddy pellet. Actually, that's a smoke producer. I think he does use pellets in there, but I don't know. He actually has a board out that will replace the board on any Traeger. And he has a full pellet fire system out, and he has a pellet grill out. In fact, I think that contest that's going on in Puerto Rico in a couple of weeks is he's one of the sponsors down there, and he's got a bunch of grills that have gone down there.
I gotta make a note on to reach out to him and remember to get a hold of some of his stuff. So, and as I recall, I mean, you can actually rig up his unit to smoke on a gas grill or charcoal grill. It generates smoke. It's not much. It's not really a heat generator, is it?
No, it's kind of like the smoke pistol, which fella he was out with his before Smoke Daddy was out with his, and he's out of Florida.
How do you like the flavor that those things generate?
It's okay. I can't say I don't like them because they got pellets in them now. Be nice. You know, there's a place for everything, and I think it's better for cold smoking, which I do very little of. So it's there's a place for it.
Mm-hmm. How many different pellet smokers have you worked with, do you think?
Well, it was a big landmark about 3 years ago when I realized that I had more pellet grills than I had any other kind of grill. And I try to keep my cooker count at around 15. My problem is my cookers are getting bigger as time has gone by. And, you know, I would tell anybody that the Mac 2-Star is a Cadillac of pellet grills. I think they just are beautifully made. They perform unbelievably well. And I like the Yoders. I've really been big on the American-made pellet grills. I have not gotten into the Chinese-made pellet grills, though. There's some very good ones out there. The Rectech's probably one of the best.
Rectech's got a lot of recognition from our Max really likes his, and a lot of our readers have bought them because they're at a very reasonable price point. And they look to be really well built.
That's true.
One of the things I like,
and I gotta say, I think in the Chinese line that Green Mountain doesn't put out a bad product.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be interesting to see how Myron Mixon's red cooker does in either Kmart or Sears, wherever it is at the $500 price point. I think that's either going to hurt pellet cookers or help us. Because people will view it as a graduation thing.
Have you worked with it? Have you seen it? Have you played with it?
No, I have not.
You know who's building it?
Have not had my hands on one.
Do you know who's making it?
They're made in China. I know the company's out of Kansas, I believe.
Okay, well the reason is I'm asking who makes it, in that I'm assuming Myron didn't sit down and design it and engineer it. And,
he sold his name.
Yeah, I mean, he endorsed. Let's be nice. He endorsed it.
Exactly.
He endorsed it. Yeah, I mean, they're putting his name on it. Somebody's building it, and I'm just wondering what manufacturer is building it with his name on it. Because $500 price point is getting down there.
Yeah, it really is. Of course, Green Mountain's got their little tailgater is about at that price point too.
A couple of our Pitmaster members have got them, and I think highly of them. With all due respect, I don't want to get into the political debate, but I'm talking to you on a computer that was built in China, looking at a camera that was built in China, with a special fancy microphone that was probably built in China. So built in China doesn't necessarily mean crap.
No, it doesn't.
But it does seem to be that in the grill.
But I'm an American manufacturer. I believe in American manufacturing. And I have no problem, but I don't want my bread to come from China. I don't want my fish to be sent to China to be processed and then shipped back to me.
Amen.
There's just some things that if I can, I'm going to buy American. And it's not a political thing.
No,
it's a personal choice.
I agree. And when we talked about the Mac, we're both fans of the Mac. I'm not paid to say it, and I don't think you are either. And when you endorse a product,
I'm not.
When you say nice things about a product, there's likely to be somebody out there who gets mad at you for not mentioning their name. So it's admirable that you mention them. The day I started assembling my Mac, because it comes in parts, I learned a great deal of respect because that thing is so over-engineered. Such heavy metal, such beautiful bends, such fit and finish. I'm sure that they can do that in China, but you don't often see it done in China. In the barbecue and grill and smoker realm, although China is capable of making great products like computers and such, in the barbecue and grill realm, it doesn't seem that many Chinese-built products are as good as the American-built products. And that's not to show
you can say
bias.
that about some American builders, too, though.
Yeah, there's some crap built in this U.S.
I'm not going to mention a name, but I bought a lot of a certain type of pellet smoker, and every one was different. And I'm like, why is everyone different? Though you should be using the same model, you know. But everyone cooked a little bit different. So, that's not just something that is regional.
Where is the future of pellet smokers? Where is it going from here? What sort of things, if you were queen for a day and you had unlimited funds and you decided for some insane reason to start manufacturing pellet smokers, what would you do for the next generation to make the really ultimate cool pellet smoker?
I would, believe it or not, I would go back and look at John Willingham's model, because he had a grill, he had a vertical chamber, he was hanging meat before hanging meat was even heard of, and even up to a whole hog, and had a rotisserie turning around to keep the meat moving. I've never been someone that cooked on a rotisserie cooker, and I'd like to play around with that at some point in time. And there's really, with the exception of the really big Cook Shack FEC 500s and 750s that they build for restaurant, there's really not one out there that has a rotisserie in it that works well. But I like the versatility of having a true grill. And I like the versatility of having an insulated smoker as well. And I can see if there's some way to combine those with dual burning system, that would give you the best of both worlds in one cooker.
Dual burning system meaning?
If I don't want to use the smoking chamber, I don't have to. If I just want to turn on the grill to do burgers or something, I could.
So you're talking
about
about
some chicken.
2 fire pots.
Right.
One that would be for the smoking chamber, and another could be a direct heat source.
Right. Now, and I couldn't give up a warming chamber like the Mac. That makes the best nachos in the world.
That for the those who don't know, that the Mac has the cooking chamber exhausts on the side, but instead of just exhausting to the exterior, they've put a box around it so that its heat exhausts into this little box, which has a grate in it, and you can use it to hold foods, just keep them warm. I've smoked cheese in there, and nachos. I haven't tried that. I gotta try that now.
That's pretty good.
I should also add, as long as we're mentioning brands, I've had good luck with the Memphis. I like the Mac a little better, but the Memphis is a sweet machine. It is very good looking. I think it's the best looking model on the market. And it's very well insulated. It's got really good lid. It looks a lot like a fancy stainless steel gas grill. It's got a nice lid that's well insulated, really heavy duty stainless steel rod, cooking grates. It works pretty well. A good thermostat controller. The Mac has one or two of the models now have Wi-Fi control. The Mac has, I think it's an option. I don't think it comes standard. Mine was built before then. But I think you can buy Wi-Fi control, so you can, on a day like today here in Chicago, you can turn it on and run outside, throw the meat on there, and come back in and watch the football game and stay warm.
That's cheating. Really?
Oh, hey,
come on now.
Okay, now listen. Let's go to the controversy then. Should pellet smokers, which use electricity to run the auger and run the fan and the thermostat control, and you set it and forget it, should they be in barbecue competitions?
As long as they're going to allow a barbecue guru or a stoker or any of those other temperature control devices out there, which are also electric, which can plug into a WSM or a Backwoods or any of these other cookers, as long as those are legal, pellets will be legal too. Now, do I see a time where people will go old school? Sure. And I'll be honest with you, when I was cooking on my Fat Boy I never even plugged in a guru because I knew how to build a fire to maintain my temperature. Same thing with the WSM. You do not have to have those things to maintain a consistent fire. You just don't need it. And I think probably the same thing with all the drum smokers that are out there is you learn how to build your fire and you cook and just whatever it is, it's just about cooking. And I'd have no problem banning a pellet cooker. I can beat you on charcoal. I don't care.
I think that's as good a place as any for us to wrap up here. I think that that's a great lesson, is that cooking is a human activity more than a machine activity. And once you understand how to build a fire and maintain it, you can cook good food. And if you don't know how, it doesn't matter whether you're using a pellet smoker or a kettle with a smoke in it.
You're probably not cooking well in your oven either.